often because rainbows are my favorite thing, but we've learned as part of life that sometimes we got to put up with the rain. At any rate, this morning, as most of you know, traditionally in most Science of Mind churches, the first 4 Sundays in January are related to the first 4 chapters in the Science of Mind textbook written by Dr. Ernest Holmes. And the Science of Mind textbook by Dr. Ernest Holmes is a text that we use here in Science of Mind churches for our classwork. One of the wonderful things about Dr. Ernest Holmes was that he explored everything, and most certainly he said that Science of Mind, or this particular rendition of this philosophy, is not the end, be-all, end-all, but that religious science, or science of the mind, is open at the top. And I think this is perhaps why that so many people can relate to this particular philosophical teaching, is because it is open at the top, which gives each one of us a great deal of freedom. However, in the first 4 chapters of the Science of Mind textbook, and basically the rest of the textbook is a commentary on the ideas, the concepts, the principles, the laws of the universe that are contained within these first 4 chapters. And so the first 4 chapters were added much later, by the way, and certainly were not in the original textbook. So the first 4 chapters, the thing itself, the way it works, no, wait just a minute, the thing itself, what it does, the way it works, and how to use it. And so this morning my topic is, what is the science of mind? I want to back up for a moment and give you a definition, though, firstly, of those first 4 chapters. In the text, it is explained that the thing itself is absolute intelligence. The way it works is through an absolute law, and what it does, it comes into manifestation, or it comes into form, and how to use it is through that which a technique which we call spiritual mind treatment or prayer. And this technique of spiritual mind treatment or prayer is for the purpose of clarifying our thinking and directing this creative power, this creative force, this creative intelligence that we learn through experience responds to each one of us by corresponding to what? To our own individual brand of thinking. And so it's important that perhaps we understand what is the science of the mind. And it's a science of the mind, because again today, and as you well know, that metaphysical teachings are still included in that which is called cults, and that many people don't really understand what the science of the mind is all about, and they think we're Scientology, sometimes it's Christian Science, but more than anything else it's very kooky. But you see, basically what we really are endeavoring to understand is to learn a way of life. And to me, religious science is all about understanding the nature of God, and the principles of God, the principles of nature, the principles of the universe, principles that are cosmic. And if they're cosmic and the universal, that means that each person uses those at the point that they individualize life, whether they're aware of it or not. And as Ernest Holmes states, that ignorance of the law is no excuse. And we learn as we are endeavoring to change our thinking so we can change our life, and that there is a law, and that it is exacting to the uttermost last farthing. And what you and I are endeavoring to do is to understand these laws, to understand these principles, and the reason it's important is principles never change. And one of the great things that we discover in the study of the science of the mind is that principles do not play favorites. Principles are no respecters of persons. That means there is a cosmic, universal, and indeed loving, because it's unconditional, principle that works for all alike. But it works for you and it works for me according to, again, our brand of thinking. And of course, really, in truth, the teacher Jesus did teach the nature of the laws of the universe and the principles of the universe, but yet those who had ears didn't necessarily hear, those who had eyes did not necessarily see, and that of course is still true today. And so what you and I are endeavoring to do is that, I think if we're honest, we say, hey, there are things that I would like to change in my life. And of course the front of the Science of Mind magazine has been the statement for many years, and that is, change your thinking and change your life. Yet so many people, even us at times, we forget that our thought has something to do with our life. We are so conditioned to that outside powers and outside people, circumstances, and events are the power unto us, that they control us. So we are here to learn that freedom is our destiny, and that we can be in charge of our lives, we can be in charge of our destiny, and we can be in control of our thinking. There is a cosmic principle, there is a creative power, there is this neutral power, and that this power and this activity is an activity and a power and a law of God. So in the beginning, God created, and we need to always go back to principle. My first teacher said, when you're in trouble, go back to principle. And believe me, since I studied with my first teacher, I've been in trouble many times. But I remember, you go back to principle. So often we get caught up in that world of effect. We get caught up in the experience, the situation, the circumstance, the event, the thing, whatever that is. We get caught up in that. When we're caught up in that, what happens? We perpetuate that. And so slowly but surely, we do learn how to think. And the statement Ernest Holmes makes, to learn how to think is to learn how to live, is really a basic fact. To learn how to think is to learn how to live. What is the science of mind? What I would like to do is to share with you a statement by Dr. Carlton Whitehead, who is the president of Religious Science International, who's also one of my very dear friends. Carlton, and this is from the front page of his January bulletin, and I just feel as if he really explained this very clearly. Didn't bring my glasses up here, so I have to put this over the light here. Anyhow, may I share these ideas with you? Religious science is the best approach to life and living that I know. It may not be the best. Gosh, I better get this. It may not be the best for everyone, which is fine, but it is the best for me. If I thought there was a better one, I would be using it. With the many wide-ranging New Age theories and philosophies, it might seem to some that religious science is becoming outdated. There are literally hundreds of seminars being offered using mental principles to attract success, gain everything one wants, etc. These can be helpful in learning techniques for using the power of mind. In one respect, they are similar to religious science, which emphasizes that the right relationship with spirit and mind does ensure successful living in general. However, there is a timelessness in religious science that keeps it in the vanguard. Its primary emphasis is on being rather than getting. Dr. Ernest Holmes chose the name religious science for a very special reason. The root meaning of religious is to bind back to God. Science of mind is the way to bind or bring back one's thoughts and beliefs and attitudes from dependence on the outer world of effects to reliance on the indwelling presence of God, the realm of cause. It is a simple and direct approach to the incredibly wonderful and divine potential in everyone. Its emphasis is on expressing and experiencing more of who and what we truly are. This releases one from the bondage of conditions and circumstances into freedom as a spiritual citizen of a spiritual universe. While this concept is central, it must not be overlooked that Dr. Holmes was emphatic that science of mind, as he presented it, was in no way complete. Many times he stated that we must keep it open at the top. The truth of being is infinite, and the more one lives in tune with the indwelling presence, the more of the many beautiful facets of this truth are perceived and understood. In light of the above, is it any wonder that I believe religious science is and will remain in a class by itself? And you know, it is open at the top, and I felt that Dr. Whitehead just expressed clearly, and certainly I agree with his concept of what religious science is. It is really in truth, basically, the bottom line always in classes, on Sunday mornings, whatever, what we're really looking into, what we're really dealing with is, who am I? Why we are here, in my opinion, is to discover who I am, what I am, why I am here, and where am I going. And I think if we were honest, we all are into wondering what that is all about. We want to know who we are. And you know, we really don't know that. And part of this whole process is one of self-discovery, that indeed we are the prodigal son, coming to an awareness of who and what we really are, why we are here, and where we are going. Part of this process also is unfolding and discovering that each one of us is greater than we think. And I know that you're here to know that, to understand that, and to begin to accept that. Too long have you and I been depreciated and or depreciated ourselves. We are here to really understand, to accept, to embody that we are spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe, that we are citizens of a spiritual universe, that we are connected to and a part of this thing that we call God. And so Ernest Holmes, in this first chapter, in trying to define this infinite presence and this power and this creative intelligence, called it the thing itself. And he says that the study of the science of mind is a study of first cause, spirit, mind, or that invisible essence, the ultimate stuff and intelligence from which everything comes, the power back of creation, the thing itself. And he says we're here to accept and to believe in this thing. We are here to accept that there is this God that is a giving, loving God. We're here to accept that the way God operates through us and in this universe is through a creative activity, through a creative intelligence, through that which we call mind. And we believe that we operate, that we respond to life through mind, and that thought is an activity of mind. And we discover that thought indeed is creative. We discover that the way God works for us is by working through us, and that what we think is what we get. And so we find out that our thinking and our feeling has something to do with our world of experience. We discover that life is a state of consciousness, and consciousness merely means what we think and what we feel. So each one of us then is the sum total of our thoughts and our belief system, our feelings, our emotions, and our attitudes. And that this neutral principle that does not play favorites, this neutral creative power that is the law and the power and the creative activity of God, responds to each one of us, again, according to our brand of thinking. And so then this teacher Jesus said that it is done unto us as we believe. But Ernest Holmes says that the greatest discovery of all time is that we can use this creative power and that we can direct it, and that we can change our thinking, and we indeed can change our life. And that this law is a law of correspondence, it is a mirror, and that it mirrors to us in our world of experience what we think and what we feel and what our attitudes are on the inside. Ernest Holmes also makes a statement in this first chapter in the Science of Mind textbook that that bondage is not God ordained, that freedom is our destiny. And I have shared before that when I really heard those words many years ago, there was just a surging in my heart that freedom indeed was really my destiny, and that I was ordained to find the truth that would set me free. And I have certainly discovered and uncovered and remembered some of those concepts and some of the ideas that are beginning to set me free. But life is a process, as you well know, and our growth is always in process. And so it's an ever unfolding, evolving experience in understanding these ideas and these concepts. That's why some people are bored. Oh, the first 4 Sundays we're going to do the textbook again. We need to remember. We need to refresh our memory. We need to go back to basics. We need to remember what principles are and how they operate, what our relationship is to them, and what their relationship is to us. Because again, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And so usually, through trial and error, through perhaps making mistakes, we learn about this great law. And we learn that indeed we must learn how to cooperate with nature, and to the degree we do that, nature cooperates with us. How do we do that? We really need to take charge of our thinking. And as we begin to do that, we find that indeed we take charge of our lives. And so as we are understanding the laws of God and how they operate in our lives, we do discover that all is love and all is law. And Browning made this statement, that all is love and all is law. God is love, and God's love is perfect. This is part of the understanding that you and I are endeavoring to embody. And God is law, and God's law is perfect. And so as we begin to understand love and law, we begin to see our life unfold. We begin to be emancipated. We begin to find a greater degree of freedom. We begin to find a greater degree of self-esteem and self-worth, knowing who I really am. Because in this technique called spiritual mind treatment, which we will address next week, in that technique, the number one step is to relate to the nature of God. And as we relate to the nature of God and the attributes and the qualities of God, we begin to use the law of God from a different frame of reference, from a frame of reference of wholeness, of peace, of poise, of balance, of love, of beauty, of opulence. And as we do that, guess what? This law that's exacting to the uttermost last farthing begins to respond, reciprocate, and we have this, again, this mirroring effect. Our life is a reflection of our inner thoughts, our attitudes, our belief system. And you know, when you look in the mirror, you don't change the mirror, you change what you hold up before the mirror. And so, if life is a state of consciousness, and consciousness is what we think, how we think, the thoughts we think, and how we feel, and our attitudes, we don't change the mirror, we change our thoughts, we change our attitudes, we change our belief system. And that's not always that easy. Most of us have had deep-seated habit patterns of thinking, of feeling, of attitudes, of relating to life, and of believing what we think is the truth about ourselves relative to life. But whatever it is that we believe about life and about ourselves is how we experience life. And so we learn that as we have a new idea, as we have a new thought, as we have a new concept, as we hold up a new image to life, that we begin to experience a greater degree of wholeness and livingness and lovingness. Ernest Holmes also states in our Science of Mind textbook that people really want to be happy, and they want to be healthy, and they want to be prosperous. And he says, I don't care what they call it, whether they call it salvation, being born again, or the remission of sins. That basically is what people want. And you know, I'm sure that all of us here this morning, in our hearts, we want to be happy, we want to be healthy, and we want to be prosperous. Ernest Holmes states that when we can begin to trust the universe, we will be happy, we will be prosperous, and we will be healthy. And so part of this process is learning how to trust the universe, learning how to cooperate with nature's laws, learning also the great joy that we are never stuck in a belief system. We are never stuck in a pattern of living, that always we can have a breakthrough, we can have a transformation, we can have something new and greater and more wonderful than we have ever experienced before. Because we are a part of an evolutionary process. And as you and I evolve our understanding and our relationship with God, with God's love, and with God's good, we move into an awareness of greater possibilities. And always this new year is a time to really be excited about greater possibilities. There's always a greater possibility because this law, this creative intelligence, this law of God, this activity of God that works through us is infinite. It is unlimited. And this is another idea that for many of us as we came into this type of thinking was new, because so often you and I have had a God of limitation. we have to understand that that which appears to be evil and limited and uncertain and unhappy in the world is not God created. That's another revolutionary idea. How many of us, and how often do we hear and read that it is God's will for whatever tragedy or unhappiness or uncertainty is occurring in the world? And so these are new ideas. They're revolutionary ideas. And we call it new thought. Yet it is not new thought. Because all these ideas and these concepts, the idea of a mathematical universe, the idea of love and law, that the great thinkers of the ages, those who really contemplated, those who delved into their inner consciousness, those who had an inquiring mind, those who were thinkers, have come up with the same ideas. And so when you can know that the great thinkers of the ages have come up with the same ideas, the same concepts, and the same results, that they are universal principles, they are universal truths. And you know that wonderful statement, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And we shall be free, provided we know the truth. Well, what is the truth? The truth is that which is so. And as you and I evolve our consciousness, our awareness, through truly our hard work, through spiritual mind treatment, through meditation, through contemplation, that we discover a new facet, a new understanding, and a greater concept. Principles are basic, and every Sunday in every class we can only deal with so many principles and so many laws. But what happens as you and I move forward into our growth consciousness, into our spiritual development, is that we refine our ideas. We clarify. There's always a refining process where it has a deeper meaning, a greater meaning, perhaps a more clear meaning of what is the nature of God. And so what your concept and what my concept of God is the most important thing that you and I have to deal with, because we create our own God. You know, we say that God created man in its own image and likeness. Yet if we think it through, we can see since primitive times that man has created God in his own image and likeness. And so we're moving into perhaps a clarified and evolved acceptance of the nature of God, not as an anthropomorphic God, but as a presence, and as a power, and as a love, and as givingness, and as beauty, as harmony, as order. And of course, if we look at the nature of the universe, we behold all of these attributes. And so we begin to perhaps attach to this God some different concepts and some different ideas. But the greatest idea of all is I am that I am. As we are developing our understanding of God's nature, our relationship with this God, and this God indeed is a loving presence. It is a loving God. And I used in one of my treatments this morning, and it's so meaningful to me, and it's from Thomas Troward's Edinburgh Lectures, but it's this statement that there is that in each one of us that has nothing else to do but to support our own individuality. There is an intuitive knower. You can call it a sixth sense. You can call it the grace of God. But within each one of us, there is a presence that has nothing to do but to watch over each one of us individually. And as we can make contact with this presence, as we can honor this intuitive knower, as we can get in touch with this through prayer, through meditation, through contemplation, because our whole quest is a unity, a oneness with the whole. That is the purpose of spiritual mind treatment. It's the purpose of meditation. It's the purpose of contemplative meditation, to allow ourselves to move in to that frame of reference, to that consciousness, into that feeling of oneness. And how do we make that connection within our thoughts and within our feeling nature? And therefore, this is our consciousness. Life is a state of consciousness. That's a cosmic principle. Whether we believe it or not, it appears to be true. And Ernest Holmes makes the suggestion that this is a science, and that the principles of science are invisible, but they're provable. And so that's where we are. We're here to explore these ideas, to explore these concepts, to relate to these principles that are proposed, that are suggested by many great thinkers, and then to prove them, to prove that they work in our lives. And if they work, then for heaven's sakes, we need to move on into a greater degree of understanding, of commitment, of dedication to using these principles and to allowing these principles to work for a greater good, for our answered prayers, for that which we call demonstrations, which merely means to bring something good into our lives that was not present before. And all of us want to bring something greater, something more wonderful, something good into our lives that isn't present right here and right now. Indeed, all of us have many wonderful things, great good, that is present. We do have loving relationships. We do have wonderful friendships, supportive people that are in our world of experience. And most certainly do we have it in this church and in our classes. And so we need to be grateful, to recognize that really we have great good already in our world of experience. However, we are in a process of evolving, of unfolding in the greater yet to be. And so this is the challenge, this is the quest, this is the great opportunity of this new beginning of 1987, to appreciate the great good that is present in our lives right here and right now, to know that there's an infinite, unlimited potential because of this great love of God and this great law of God. And what does this law do? This law responds to you and to me individually, again, according to our direction. And the fact, again, that we can use it and that we can direct it is the greatest discovery of all time. The science of the mind is a study of spiritual psychology, a study of first cause, pure spirit, that infinite intelligence that in the beginning created all that is and called it good. That we're here to move into our own personal experience with this great God, not a far-off God, not a punishing and a rewarding God, not a God that plays favorites, but a God that is universal but very personal. And therefore, what kind of a God do you have? Where do we think God is? What do we think God is doing for us or to us is of utmost import. And so I suggest that perhaps this first Sunday of 1987, that each one of us takes just a little time and thinks through what our concept of God is, what our relationship is with that God, what our working relationship is with that God, and how are we allowing the givingness of God's love to operate in us, through us, as us. Yes, if you think it through, all is love and all is law. And what's wonderful is that as we do develop, and I know I've repeated this Sunday after Sunday, but it is just, to me, so important that I need to share it over and over again, that as we are developing our spiritual awareness, our consciousness, our oneness, our union with this indwelling God of love and good, that we are developing a relationship with love. God is love. We are the beloved of God, and that we are greater than we think. And so as we develop this experience, and we do this through prayer again, meditation, treatment, etc., but as we do that, we are directing and using this neutral, creative intelligence, this power for good, this great force, this great energy in a greater, constructive, optimum, life-giving way. And this is what greatness and goodness and the forward movement of our lives is all about. And so we are here to understand that the thing itself is this great creative intelligence, this great mind, and that the mind that governs this universe is the same mind that you and I use at the point that we individualize life. You know, many of these ideas that I've shared again this morning are still revolutionary, and perhaps we haven't totally subjectively accepted them as valid for us yet. But I'm sure that all of us have accepted them in some degree. And therefore, what is our life all about? But to continue to progress, to evolve, to expand into a greater acceptance that God does bless us and keep us, as Ruth was sharing with us this morning. And so Ernest Holmes says that the world is tired of mysteries, does not understand symbols, and longs for reality. What is reality? Where may it be found? And how is it used? These ideas I've shared this morning, these ideas I'm going to be sharing for the next 3 Sundays as we move through the foundation of the teaching of the textbook, most certainly not an exclusive philosophy as I already shared or Ernest Holmes shared, but a way of life. And so the science of mind for me has become my way. It's been a way, and you know, the thing that I've discovered personally, I am an avid reader. I indeed have an open mind. There are many great teachers, and that whether it's Emmett Fox or whether it's Yogananda, whether it's Paul Brenton, whether it's Joel Goldsmith, that all of these great teachers have something to offer to each one of us, and that some of us relate to one teacher in a different way than to another. But each one is bringing forth universal truths that were indeed given to us by the great teacher, Jesus. And so we have just moved through this holiday season. We have just experienced this divine